Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Tammy Cheney, and she is going to tell us about her spiritual experiences. And I was just telling her that I told my husband this morning, she's the only one that I know of that had a worse childhood than I did. And I'm sorry to hear that. But we're here.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So start wherever you like and take as long as you like, Tammy.
Okay, so I feel like I need to start back with what was happening to me as a child because I really believe that trauma is is the reason that brings on NDEs, and it's also the reason that may bring on certain spiritual experiences. So, I grew up in a home where my mom, I can't say for sure, but I believe that she was doing a lot of or drinking a lot of alcohol while she was pregnant for me. And she may have been doing other things, but I think her main choice was alcohol. And I, during her pregnancy, at about 6 months of pregnancy, I stopped growing inside of her. And that's one of the big signs of alcohol use during pregnancy is the fetus will stop growing. So she had a really hard pregnancy with me and did have to be did have to deliver at a specialty hospital for me due to the circumstances. And they made her carry me a little bit longer because I was so underdeveloped. And but when she had me, I was still only 5 pounds 4 ounces, so I was a really super tiny baby. And I don't believe that my mom wanted to be a mom, and so there was a lot of right from the very get-go, there was a lot of neglect, and which eventually turned into in from about a year old and on it turned into horrible neglect and abuse where, as an example, she left me in my crib countless hours, and sometimes I would take off my own diaper because I would be, I had soiled my diaper. And as a small child, I have 8 children, so I had one child that would, as soon as he went used or soiled his diaper, he would take it off and just start painting the crib and painting the walls. So apparently I was one of those babies also. And so her way of punishing me was to leave me in my feces for many days. Like it would be dried and just all over the place, and she just left me in there for multiple days at a time where I was just sleeping in my feces. And after a certain amount of time of living in that type of environment, I had developed an eye infection where it's sort of like how certain animals, maybe a snake. I'm trying to picture an animal, but your eye will start to form a film over your eye to protect it. And I had had that film over my eye for so long before she had taken me into the doctors that I had lost half my sight in my eye. And she had to have surgery, and they ended up removing it and pulling that layer of film off my eye, and I ended up I'm half blind in my left eye. So, and it will, they did try to repair it with eye patches and glasses and stuff like that, but the doctors, I mean my parents were doing what they were told to do because they didn't want to be suspects in any kind of a situation, so of course they were doing what they were told to do. But I would always lose my glasses, and it was horribly embarrassing to go to school with an eye patch on and stuff like that. So as soon as I would get to school, I would take the eye patch off because I was being made fun of so bad. And so my eye never developed its proper sight. But as time went on, one of the punishments that my mom enjoyed doing, and I don't know if it was really a punishment or more of she just didn't want me to see what she was doing, but she would lock me in this little food closet. It was just like a 3x3 food closet, and it had, and this is where my memory comes in clear. I can see it just like it was happening yesterday. And so it would be a food shelf with like, or a food closet with shelves, but the bottom was open, so I was in like a maybe a 3x3 box basically. And I was so small that I couldn't reach my hand up to the doorknob, you know, because the shelves were in the way. So I would be locked in there, and I would be locked in there for hours. And it and it always just seemed like it would be when certain people would come over, because I could hear what was going on outside. And it would be a certain group of people she was hanging out with at that time. And so in that closet, I began to be able to communicate with, you know, at that time, I didn't know the name was God. I just began to communicate with an entity, and just later on assumed it was God, because I continued on at that point throughout my entire childhood and into my adulthood, communicating with that entity, which, you know, it brought the feelings of being in the presence or being with this entity was so, there was so much love. And like that's the biggest thing that I can say, is just it was just this wonderful unconditional love, and that's the only way that I can explain it. And I was being taught, you know, right from wrong, and that's the only way I can explain it. Now, as I got older, at the age of 5, I began to have out of body experiences. Now, I didn't know, of course, at the age of 5 that it's called out of body experience. And I also did not realize that is not something that everybody goes, you know, that's a normal thing for everybody. But being as young as I was at 5 years old, when it happened to me the first time, or actually multiple times at that young of an age, every time it was happening, it would scare the living daylights out of me. So so when my body would lift up out of my body, I never turned around to look at my body. And where I would go would just be a place of pure bliss. And that's the only way that I can explain it. It was just pure bliss. And but every time I had to come back to my body, I would see my body there in the bed, and I would be fighting it. No, 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 you know, I don't want to go back. And but of course I would always go back. And the feeling of coming out of your body was such a jolting experience, and then the feeling of going back in your body was such a jolting experience. And that part is what scared me, is that jolt feeling. And as time had went by, I did begin to get used to it, and it became something normal to me. But what was also happening at the age of 5, with not only the abuse from my mother and my stepfather at that time, which when I try to explain to people how I was disciplined, we were not spanked. There was no spanking. We were horribly beat, like a 2 men fighting in a bar. or two women fighting in a bar. You know what I mean? It was, you know, we were slung around like rag dolls by our hair and kicked and hit, and it was just, it was a horror show. And
You
but
had
at the same,
siblings?
I did. And so I'm going to talk about my older brother, who is almost 3 years older than me. He as well was experiencing the same abuse. So now we were the stepchildren, and me and my older brother were the stepchildren.
Of
My
your
mom,
stepdad, of your,
right, of my mom's remarriage. She remarried. I think I was about 15 months old or so when she remarried. And so the abuse started with him almost immediately. And and it, my mom never tried to protect us. It was almost like she was so thankful that there was somebody there to take care of her problems. But they did eventually have twins, so I have twin younger brothers also. So which would be now my stepfather's real sons. And so in the midst of the abuse, still at the age of 5, now things could have been happening before that, but my older brother began to start molesting me. He would pull me into his closet in his room, or more like force me into the closet of his room and force me to let him do the things that he was doing. And my mom would catch him all the time, but we would both get horribly beaten for what was going on, even though, you know, I'm only 5, I'm this little tiny girl, and I certainly did not want to be being, you know, forced by my brother to do anything. But that was just the way that it was. Like, I was scared to death of my older brother, and that was just the way that it was. And so so as time had went by, we moved from that place. No, let me go back. I'm sorry. My first rape was at the age of 5. My brother had forced me to follow him to this barn that he had found, like it was 2 blocks over in these woods that were there. And he made me go to this barn with him. And, you know, of course, I don't know why he's bringing me to the barn, but it did seem kind of exciting to go on this adventure. So, you know, after him, you know, telling me, let's go, even though I knew we'd be in trouble for leaving the yard, I ended up just going with him. And there was just literally this random barn that is out in the woods. There's no house near it or anything. And when I got to the top of the barn, there were 2 older kids, older than my brother. Now he's 3 years older than me. So these kids, I want to say that they were at least 2 or 3 years older than him. And as soon as we got up there, those kids were there, you know, and I'm not expecting anything, you know, I'm just thinking we found this barn. My brother's got friends there. And the first thing my brother did was forced me to take off my clothes and forced me to lay down on the floor and allow both these 2 young boys to rape me. And so it was quite horrifying. And the thing is I never could like tell on him for anything, because I knew the horrible beating that we would probably both go through. So I had to live with that, basically. So so we moved from that house into the house that I ended up growing up until I was 15 years old. When we moved into the new house, the sexual abuse by my brother didn't stop. And now I just want to say that it wasn't something that happened every day. It was just happening all the time. And that's the only way I can explain it. It wasn't an everyday thing. It just was happening all the time. And he was always pushing other people to do things to me as well, like all his friends. And it was always just this public thing with him and his friends, whoever his friends were at that time. So in that house, I'm still continually able to communicate with that voice, that entity that was in that closet when I was 3 years old. That never stopped. It was nonstop, like every day, all day. I was constantly communicating with this entity, which I now call as God. And I was constantly being taught, like, just so many things, like morals and just, you know, goodness and forgiveness and just all these, you know, I believe that should be or are natural inborn instinct in a human being is to be good and to love, you know. And so what began to happen in that house was between the ages of, I want to say probably 6 and 8. And I just want to say that in the meantime, through this entire time, I'm still having out of body experiences. That was just normal to me. I would just normally leave my body, and I just assumed that, like I said, that everybody else was doing the same thing, and that was just normal. And I left it. No, it became something that was no longer a jolt to come out of my body. I could just leave myself at will. And and it wasn't like I had to try to do it. It would just automatically happen to me. I would just be there, and then I would be in a whole nother realm. And
Because you wanted to,
I don't know
or it
that
just
I
happened?
even, it would just happen. I
Okay.
had no control over it. It was just, I would just leave the room and be somewhere else. I had multiple occasions where my parents would be screaming my name, and our house was just a small 700 square foot house. So it was a really small house. So they would be screaming and screaming, you know, for me to come to them for whatever it was they needed me to come to them. And because I was in the other realm, I couldn't hear them. I had no consciousness of what was going on in the physical. I was gone somewhere else, you know, and my mom or my stepfather would come up and like kick me and, you know, scream at me, "You can't hear me screaming out your name." And I truly could not hear because I was in a whole nother realm. But so between the ages of 6 and 8, an entity, a male figure entity, began to come and visit me at night. Now, this entity was not something that felt peaceful. So I was super, super scared every time it would come. And the way it would come is the whole house would be quiet. There would be no noise in the house. It would be probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. And all of a sudden I could hear him coming down the hallway, and he wore like heavy boots. And it would be like I would hear him coming, and he'd come and he'd come, you know, and as soon as he got to his room, or as soon as he would get to my room, it was almost like he would just stand there and observe me. But by that time, I had already had my covers over, excuse me, I already had my covers over my head, and I was scared to death of whatever that was observing me. And that continually went on. And I did tell my family at that time, I told them, I said, "There's a man that is visiting me at night in my room." And they would say, "Oh, you're just dreaming. You're just, there's nothing going on. It's just a dream." Or they would just blow it off, you know. But after me saying it multiple times, I would say over and over again, "He came again last night. He came again." You know, I just kept telling them. And it then became something that they would just make fun of me about. It was just another thing that they could, make fun of me about. But one of the things that I want to emphasize about it is we had a cat at the time, and the cat was not a kid-friendly cat. It was my mom's cat, and it was not kid-friendly. It certainly did not ever sleep in the beds with any of us kids or even come into our room. And but there was one specific night that the man came, and my cat came in my room and literally jumped up in my bed and was like hiding under the covers with me. So whatever that presence was, my cat actually knew that it was there and was also afraid too, and came and hid with me. And another thing that I had done to just try to prove to them that there's a man that's coming and visiting me at night is I put a piece of paper and a pencil next to my bed on a nightstand. So when I heard him coming, I wrote on the piece of paper, okay, he's coming. So that when I woke up in the morning, if that paper's there, then I know that I was awake, because they just kept making fun of me. Oh, you're sleeping, you're this, that, and the other. And and sure enough, I woke up in the morning and the paper was there. And but none of that was convinced my family that there was a man coming and visiting me at night. So eventually, after a couple of years, it just stopped, and it never, he just left. I don't know what happened or how it stopped, but eventually it just stopped. And so in the meantime of time going by, my living situation with my family just was such a horror show. Like my parents would just think of all these torture techniques that they could torture us with. And one of the things that they would make me and my brother do is they would make us stand on one leg with our hands straight up in the air, and they would force us to stand that way for hours and hours. And if our hands were to drop even just a little bit, or if our leg dropped just a little bit, they had a belt next to them, and we would be whipped with the belt and then forced to stand back on one leg with our hands in the air. And I've sampled this out a little bit with my own children, just not as a punishment, but just to show them, one of the torture techniques that they would do. And I would tell them, I'm like, stand on one leg and put your hands in the air and just see how long you can do it, And, it was just like a experiment, with my kids, because I'm very close with my kids. And so my kids would do it, and they'd be all like stumbling over and stuff. Like, we could not move. Like, if our body moved in any kind of a way, we would be whipped. And so my kids couldn't do it for more than 5 minutes, and I don't know how me and my brother did it for hours and hours and hours. Like, I just don't even know. And another torture technique that they like to do is they tell us to go into the kitchen and clean every dish in the house. So we had to pull out all the dishes in our entire kitchen, pots, pans, bowls, like it would be hundreds and hundreds of dishes. And they'd make us wash, rinse, dry, and put away. And then they'd go in and check. My stepfather would go in to check, and he'd say, if I find one dish with one spot of anything on it, you're doing them again. And of course, he would find one spot on one dish somewhere and tell us to do it. All right, do it all over again. And we would literally be up till 2 o'clock in the morning doing every dish in the house over and over and over again. And so it was just the abuse was just nonstop. Like, the abuse and neglect. At one point in time, I mean, I know that I've had broken ribs from my dad, like kicking me all the way to my bedroom and kicking me, kicking me all, just kicking me in my side until he got me to my bedroom. Because I know that I've had broke ribs because I know other people that have had a broke rib, and when they describe it, it's the exact description, but there's certain things that I would never be able to prove, because stuff like that heals and it goes away, and you don't have proof to prove stuff like that. But one of the things that had happened to me, like, we never had any type of medical, like, we never went to the doctors, and it's not that I think that a child needs to go to the doctors on a continual, regular basis, but we never went to the doctors. And my parents were very good at hiding what they were doing and what was going on in the home. And bringing us to the doctors, that would reveal lots of wounds, like bruises, that we were bruised from the bottom of our legs all the way up to about the shoulders of our body. We would just be covered in bruises, old bruises, new bruises. And so they were very good at hiding stuff like that. Like, my mom, she would chop my hair off like a boy, and she would make me wear long sleeve and pants when I would go to school or go out into public. I was never allowed to wear a dress or dress, like other girls. I had to be dressed where my body was fully covered. And the same with my brothers, so that people in public would not be able to see anything on us. They were very good at hiding, and they were very good at making it look like in public settings that we were the perfect all-American family. So so nobody knew nothing. And of course, we were so scared to death to say anything. And not only were we scared to death to say anything, but we were, I don't know if the word is groomed, but we were told, on multiple occasions, you are never allowed to say these things, or you'll get a worse beating than you've ever gotten. We were told, scared into knowing that we can never open our mouth about what's going on at home.
What about the twins? Did they belong to your stepdad? I forget what you said.
No, they were my stepfather and my mom's pride and joy. So they were
did they belong to stepdad though?
Yes, they were his,
Okay.
my mom and my stepfather's sons.
Okay.
So they were never abused, but they are horribly messed up now in their adult life, just by what they continually witnessed happening to me and my brother. I mean, horribly, horribly messed up. And so as time went by, I'm still in full communication nonstop with the entity that I want to call God. And that was just normal. That was every day, all day, and it was just normal. And I assumed everybody else was going through that too. And I'm trying not to miss something that happened between the ages of, oh, okay, I know, I got to get myself back on track. I'm sorry. My head tries to give me a million things at once, so I got to sort through. But so when I was in the 4th grade, I was 12 years old, because I had failed 1st grade and I failed 3rd grade, so I had to do them over. So I was a little bit older than, the kids in my class, but very, very developmentally delayed. So it wasn't like I was smarter than them in any kind of a way. But and to give you an example of the 4th grade, when I was in the 4th grade, I grew up in Southeast Florida. So that year was the year that the Challenger blew up, and we all witnessed it, like the whole school, because every time a shuttle or something would go up, we'd go outside with the teachers and everybody, we'd all witness it. So I saw the Challenger blow up with my own eyes, and also felt the impact of the blow up. All of us, the whole school did. And so that's the year that, to give you an example of kind of so you can think in your head what time frame it was. So my mom had a horse, and her horse kicked me in the face, and one hoof got me on this side and one hoof got me right here. And it threw me about 5 feet and it knocked me completely out. And I'm thankful that my younger brothers were there, because now I can get more information, and I have gotten more information on it. But I was knocked completely out, and woke up picking myself up off the ground. And what I noticed was the whole scenery had changed, because before I got kicked, I was standing up at the front by the first orange tree with my mom, and she was putting a salt lick in. And now my whole scenery is over by the second orange tree, and my mom's standing and talking to the lady that owns the farm where we were boarding our horse. So I knew time had went by, that I just lost time. And I didn't know how much time I lost, but my brother said that I was knocked out for about between like 5 to 8 minutes. But I'm picking myself up off the ground, and I have no idea what just happened to me. And my mom and the lady and everybody came over. My mom's checking my mouth to see if I still have my teeth in my mouth and stuff like that. I still had my teeth, but I had bit through my lip. I don't know if you're able to see it on camera, but I bit through my lip, and it's still like a scar tissue where my whole lip was bit through, and it was only hanging by a thread on both sides. So she leaves there and she goes to a clinic right up the road. And as soon as the nurse or whatever saw me at that clinic, she immediately told my mom, "You need to take her to the emergency room. I'm pretty sure her jaw is broke and she's going to need stitches on her lip." And for whatever reason, which isn't abnormal, I should expect it, but my mom never brought me to the emergency room. She brought me straight home and put me in the bed and made me stay in the bed for the weekend. And she sent me to school on Monday. And here my lip was so big and so swollen that it was hanging down to my chin. My head was like sideways, like my jaw was swollen out this way, my head was swollen out this way. And I literally looked like, how my oldest brother describes it, he was like, not to make fun of anybody like the Elephant Man, he said, but you looked like the Elephant Man. Your face was so discombobulated and swollen. And so as soon as I walked into school, of course, the school immediately called authorities and, Department of Children and Families or whatever. And they came out, they photographed it, they got a hold of my mom. And my mom told him, yeah, she got kicked by a horse, but she was looked over by the physicians or doctors or however she said it, and she just has to heal. And so they believed her. Like,
oh Lord.
they didn't ask for any paperwork. They didn't want to see proof. They just believed her. And so I was, I obviously had a horrible, horrible concussion. My face was so swollen that my eyes sockets were even with the rest of my face. And my whole face was black and blue, like the most horrid. My entire face was black and blue. Like, I looked at myself one time in the mirror and it scared the living daylights out of me. I looked so horrible. And I didn't look at myself in the mirror again after that. It was probably months before I looked at myself in the mirror. But one thing that I noticed was I couldn't open my mouth more than like an inch, maybe a little bit less than an inch. And so I had to eat for 2 years. It took, or 2 school years. Let me just put it that way, because I don't know if school years aren't a full 12 months, but definitely 2 full school years. The only way that I could eat was with a spoon, and I had to put the spoon between my teeth, and I would scrape it off with the top of my teeth and then I would just gnaw the food with my tongue, and that was the only way I could eat because my jaw would not open up any farther than, you know, this much. And so, you know, later on in adulthood, I just assumed I must have had like lockjaw or something, and that's why I couldn't open my mouth any more than that. But being that I was a small child, I didn't realize that I didn't know that my jaw was broke. I didn't know. I'm only a child, so I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why my mouth won't open any farther than that. And nobody at the school, no authorities, nobody took notice that, you know, that there was something wrong with me. Nobody noticed nothing. And so so it took me, like I said, a couple years to get my jaw back open. And the only reason why I knew my jaw was broke is I went to the dentist in my early 20s for the first time. And the dentist did a full mouth x-ray. And when he got the x-ray back, he said, "Oh, you broke your jaw." And I was like, "No, like, not that I know of," you know what I mean? And he literally showed me the x-ray, and you could see it was still not healed. It was completely cracked all the way down. The whole bone was completely cracked open right here on the side of my jaw. I can, now that I know where it's at, I feel there's like this gap there, like it's not even, it dips in and then comes back out. So now that I know where it's at, I know where my jaw was broke.
It had to be horribly painful.
I can't even imagine, Peggy, the pain that I must have been going through. And I can assure you, for sure, I had no pain medication. There was no pain medication. We were never given any type of pain medication.
Don't remember the pain?
I can't remember. It must have been that traumatizing. I just know that it was really horribly hard for me to go to school because it was just nonstop, continually kids laughing and making fun of me. And, you know, as I walked through the hallways or whatever, everybody was just continually staring at me. And it took months for just the bruising and everything to go away. So it was a pretty good chunk of time of kids just laughing at me and making fun of me because of how I looked, because I looked so distorted.
You know,
And,
I wonder if I have situations and memories that I'll tell my mom, like, "Oh, you know, I don't remember the pain," and she'd laugh. "Oh, you don't?" Like she was hoping I remembered the pain from, you know, the abuse.
wow.
I just wonder if maybe God spared us.
Yeah.
Maybe we didn't have it because maybe God just took it from us.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
There's
that's
enough going
possible.
on.
That's possible because, like I said, I was in constant communication with God, and it was normal for me. You know, He was my comforter, He was my peace. You know, and it was always continual. You know, when I was in the presence, it was always continual, unconditional love, and that's the only way I can explain it. It was pure bliss when I was in His presence, and I was in His presence a lot. And I would be there at school, like like it took me a while to learn not to talk out loud to the entity, but I would always get caught in school talking, but I wouldn't be talking to like another student. I would be talking to God. And because I was in His presence, I wouldn't recognize my outside presence of where I was at. And so I didn't realize I was talking out loud, and I would get caught by the teacher. I mean, I had a real hard time with my teachers throughout school. My second grade teacher was the only one that I can say was my favorite teacher in the world, because she saw something in me, whatever that was, where she took me in like a teacher's pet, and she was my only teacher that did that. But all my other teachers, they tortured me. It was just horrible. They could not wait to call my parents to tell them that I was talking again, that I'm constantly talking. I'm getting up and I'm walking around the room, and I don't even know that I'm doing these things until the teacher gets my attention and says, "Tammy, get in your seat." You know what I mean? And I'm like, "Whoa, where am I?" You know, I have to go sit down. And so I had on my report card, I don't know how it was where you were at, but in Florida, we had, you know, math, English, science, whatever. And then at the bottom, it would say conduct, and then they'd put a grade for conduct. I had an F in conduct every single report card, every single year, except for in the second grade. Like my teachers put whatever I was doing was horribly disturbing to them for some reason. And they played into it like a bully teacher, you know? And so as time went by, you know, the abuse never stopped. And at 12 years old, like I said, I got kicked by the horse. And 6 months later, I got into a head-on collision with my stepfather with a brick road.
How much later did you say?
6 months later. So this is still in the same school year.
So you still hadn't healed. Y'all still hadn't healed.
I still was not healed. No, nowhere near healed. And so what ended up happening is the car went off the road just a little bit, and he caught some wet grass. And we were literally about to go over this bridge with a canal underneath that was maybe 6 foot of water or whatever underneath. And he went onto the wet grass, and we jumped the canal. And you know how a bridge, underneath a bridge, they have the brick wall to help support the bridge. Well, we jumped the canal and we hit the brick wall head on. And I ended up I don't know if this happens all the time, but of course we weren't wearing seatbelts at that time. You know, that was in the 80s. So we weren't wearing seatbelts. That wasn't a normal thing. But
this was 70s?
No, in the 80s. This was in the 80s.
This was in the 80s, okay.
Yeah. And
Gotcha.
I think it was like 87, whatever year that the space shuttle blew up is the year that it happened. And so what happened was my whole body simultaneously slid forward when we hit. Now, I don't remember that part. I just know that that's what happened because my knees ripped out the glove box. So my knees were all busted up. My neck hit the dashboard and busted the dashboard. So I had slices across my neck, and my head hit the windshield and it knocked me out. And my hand was on the window, so it slid forward and I broke my wrist. So immediately I couldn't move my neck. And my stepfather was like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, I can't move my neck. And then I blacked out right then and there. So I don't know how my stepfather got out of the vehicle. I don't know how he got me out of the vehicle. But the next thing I remember coming to is we were standing on the side of the road, and he was waving down a vehicle, and it was just this random pickup truck. And he told the people in the pickup truck, I just live right down the road. My daughter can show you where it is. And he threw me into the back of these strange people's pickup truck and asked them to bring me home so I can go tell my mom that we just totaled her car. So, you know, at this point, I can't move my neck. I'm in complete shock. I don't even know that my wrist is broke. I don't know that my throat is cut. You know, like I'm horribly messed up. So I go inside the people bring me to the house, and I go inside. I'm like, Mom, we just totaled your car and Dad needs you to come over there to help him. And there was no concern with, are you okay? You know, nothing like that. She just started cursing and swearing and grabbed my stepfather's keys to his truck and started walking outside and told me, get in the truck, show me where he's at, you know. So I go to grab the truck handle, and it's one of those handles where you have to use your thumb to push in the button. And so I grabbed the handle and I went to go push my thumb, and I couldn't because my wrist was broken here from hitting the corner of the window with my hand. And so I had to try to use my other hand to open the door. Of course, I got it open. We get in the truck. I bring her over there and stuff. But I got absolutely no medical attention at all for that situation. And of course, that was a Saturday when that happened. And Monday, they sent me to school. So I go to school. My throat is slit in multiple different places. My head is like swollen because my head hit the windshield. My knees are all busted up. And of course, they call Department of Children and Families again. So they call them, make them aware of, the observations they're making. And my mom, of course, again told them she brought me in for medical attention and I'm going to be fine and I just have to heal. Never ever did they ask for any paperwork. They did not want any type of proof. They just believed my mom. So of course now I'm dealing with a second concussion 6 months after, my whole situation that happened. And so so here that's 12 years old. And I'm sorry, I was not 12 years old. I was 10 years old in the fourth grade. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
It takes me a little while because there's so many layers to this, but at 12 years old, so now I'm going from 10 years old to 12 years old, but I was still 2 years older than the rest of my classmates in fourth grade at 10 years old, because I had failed twice. So at 12 years old, I'm still having my spiritual experience and still communicating with God, still thinking that this is normal and this is what everybody else does too, and not realizing that it's something wrong. But at that point, I had learned how to control, I learned how to not talk out loud anymore. I learned how to just communicate telepathically. And because the voice that I heard from him, or the way that I communicated with him, there was no voice to it. It was all telepathic. But, I was the one that was talking out loud. But I learned by that point not to talk out loud because it was getting me into so much trouble, even though I didn't even realize I was talking out loud. And so by that time I had mastered not talking to God out loud and just communicating with him telepathically. And so at 12 years old, I was in the 6th grade, and now in Florida at that time, 6th grade was still elementary school. Middle school was only 7th and 8th grade. So I'm at the elementary school, and I ended up getting into trouble with my family. This was just after Thanksgiving, but it might have been like the first or second day of December. Now my birthday is December 5th, so I was 12, but I was turning 13 within a few days. So I got into trouble for something, and I can't really fully remember like the whole details. I think I was outside and I got caught being outside, and I knew that I was going to get like a beating of a lifetime. It was going to be a beating of a lifetime when my parents got home. And how I got caught outside is my parents were at a party with their friends, like a Christmas or a holiday party with my friends, and all of us kids were left home and they forgot something. So my mom drove home and she busted me outside. So I knew that I was going to be in big, huge trouble. So I just decided I was going to run away, that there was just no way I was going to take this beating and have to go through what I was going to go through. So as soon as she left to go back to the party, I packed a bag.
They're going to kill you.
Yeah. I packed it. We were always in fear that every single time, it was nonstop. It was every day. We were tortured, beaten, verbally, mentally, emotionally. I mean, every type of abuse on a daily basis. There was never a day that we got a break. And so I ran away from home and I went to my friend's house down the road, and her brothers were her caregivers because their parents were killed in a car accident, and they were like in their late 20s and they were in the military at the time, and they came out of the military to take care of their sister. So so I run away, I go to their house, and as soon as I get there, I tell my friend I'm running away. My stepfather's going to kill me when they get home, and I can't take another beating. And So she had me hiding in her closet. And when her brothers found out, they immediately told her, oh, no, 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 no. She needs to go. She cannot be here. I do not want the cops here. No, she's got to go. Well, at that time, her brothers had some friends that were still in the military that were there out on vacation for the holidays. And so I left and started walking down the dirt road to leave her house. And the three friends that were the military friends drove up in this pickup truck and said, hey, we can give you a ride to one of your friends' house if you need a ride. So I was like, oh, yes, thank you. And I'm thinking, these are military men. These are authority type figures. You know what I mean? So they have to be safe, like what
I know where this is going.
Yeah. And so I got in the truck with them, and what they ended up doing is the next road over was just a dirt road along the canal. And there was like the back of semi trucks that were parked there, because I'm from Florida, so it's the orange, the orange state. So there was orange trees all around us, so it was just the back of the semi trucks that would carry the oranges. And so they brought me on that back road where those orange trucks were along the canal, and they already had a cooler in the back of their pickup truck, and they just all of a sudden just wanted to hang out with me, and I'm just this little girl. I'm only 12 years old, obviously developmentally delayed, and just, not like, I don't know if normal 12-year-olds are partiers or anything like that, but I wasn't, I didn't drink or do drugs. And they started sitting with me, and they were drinking, and they were trying to get me to drink beer with them. And, I'm just thinking in my head, I'm only a 12-year-old little girl. That's not 12-year-old little girls don't drink, so I'm like, no, 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 thank you, And when they saw that, when they realized that I wasn't really budging, they ended up leaving me out on that dirt road by myself. And by this time it's nighttime and it's dark. And so they just ended up leaving me there. They didn't bring me to my friend's house like they said. They just left me on this dirt road. And so I noticed that on the orange trucks, the backs of the semi trucks, like the door to the semi truck was open. So I was like, oh, I'll just climb up in there. So I climbed up into that orange truck, and I was there for hours. Like I have to say that was probably, by that time it was probably at around midnight or whatever. And these military guys had been gone for hours. And all of a sudden I see a truck. I could see headlights coming up that dirt road. And, at first I was hiding because I didn't know if it was my parents at that point looking for me, because obviously by that point they know that I ran away. And so I'm watching, I'm peeking through the little door, and I'm watching them to see who it was. And it ended up being one of the military men coming back. And so as soon as I saw that it was that guy's pickup truck, I thought he came back to give me a ride again. You know what I mean? And so I waved to him, like I waved to let him know I'm right here, So I showed him where I was at, thinking he was coming to help me. So he comes over there, he climbs up into the back of the semi truck, and immediately he just starts grabbing me to like embrace me in some kind of a way, and I'm like, whoa, I'm pulling away from him, like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on? I'm thinking this guy's helping me, and this is not helping me, kind of a deal. I'm thinking in my head, this is not helping me. And as soon as I resisted him, he immediately backhanded me to the floor and knocked me. He hit me so hard that he knocked me out for a moment in time. I can't tell you how long it was, but in that moment of time of me waking up, he was already on top of me, and now going to do whatever he wants with me. And he did. That man horribly, horribly raped me in every way, possible that you can be raped. And I know 100% the man was going to kill me. He was going to kill me because he needed to get rid of the evidence. And what ended up happening to me, like similar almost like how your situation happened, you kind of went into another place and you didn't have to experience what had happened to you. Well, I had like a moment where I was present, but I was also in another realm at the same time. I was in both places. So I was still conscious of what was going on with me on the outside, but all of a sudden I zoned in on another realm. And in this other realm, the God just started telling me, you need to start speaking these words right here. Just repeat after me. Just start saying these words. So immediately I just started speaking whatever the God was telling me, and these words just started coming out of my mouth. And as I'm these words, and it's just continually just a nonstop flow of words, and I'm just saying it and saying it and saying it. And I can't tell you right now what I said at that time, but whatever it was that came out of my mouth, it convinced this man that I would never tell anybody. It convinced this man that there's nothing that he will ever have to worry about with this whole situation that just happened. And he believed me. Like I couldn't believe that he believed me, because he for sure was going to kill me. I have to say that he must have said multiple times that he's going to kill me or something, because there was no doubt in my mind that he made it clear to me that I was going to be killed after this. So somehow, whatever those words were, it convinced him that I would never tell anybody. So after, he got done doing what he was doing, and he probably wasn't done with what he was doing, he told me that he's going to run up to the corner store and get some snacks and some drinks, and that he'd be right back. And he asked me if there was anything that I needed, and I'm being like, he's my best friend. You know what I mean? Thank you for helping me. You're my best friend, whatever was coming out of my mouth. And the only thing that I could think of, which, when I think about it now, it must have, I don't know how he thought in his head why it was such an unusual request, but I asked him if he could get me a toothbrush and toothpaste. That's the only thing I wanted, because I just, like, this man's smell was so all over me, and I couldn't get rid of it. I could not get rid of this man's smell. That's all I smelled. So I just wanted to brush my teeth, and try to get this smell off of me. So he was like, okay, I'll be right back, so he left. And literally the minute he pulled away and I couldn't see his truck anymore, I jumped out of the orange truck and I just booked it. And I just started going farther and farther away from my own house, and just started going in, directions that I was familiar with, where I wouldn't be lost and I would kind of know where I was at. And I really honestly can't remember where I slept that night, but I obviously slept somewhere outside on the ground somewhere, and maybe in some woods or something. But I was in such shock about what just happened to me that I've kind of blacked out that whole scenery of, what I did after that. But the next day I ended up walking to a friend's house, and when I got to the friend's house, the friend came outside. He's like, you got to leave right now. My grandma's going to kill me that you're here, So then I had to leave. Well, for the next 3 days, I really cannot remember where I slept at, where I stayed at. I wasn't at any friend's house. I wasn't at anybody's house. I was out in the elements of wherever I was at. And the only thing that was just torturing me and tormenting me is that man's smell was still on me. Like, I could not get that man's smell. I just wanted to take a shower so I could get this man's smell off of me. So after 3 days, I ended up getting caught, and the cops took me to a a juvenile like facility for runaways or whatever. It was a jail. Like we were locked up in cages and stuff like that. But I ended up telling a counselor what had just happened to me and whatever. And at that time, I could remember the words that I told the guy. And one thing I can remember that counselor saying was like, I can't believe that you would have thought of to say those words. Like, how were you able to know those words to get yourself out of that situation at 12 years old? Like, she was so impressed, but I couldn't tell her God told me those words. You know, I
Right.
couldn't tell her that. So so I ended up going to court. I think it was like a couple days later or whatever, maybe even a week later, and the judge was going to release me to go home, and I just fell apart. I just sobbed and I cried and I begged the judge, please don't send me home. Please don't do this. Like I was uncontrollably sobbing and begging him not to send me home. But at the same time, like when you're groomed that you're not allowed to tell what's going on at home, I couldn't tell them I'm being
Right.
abused. You know what I mean? Because what if he does send me home and now I just told on them and now I'm really going to get tortured? You know
Right.
what I mean? So, so I, so he ended up bringing he told my mom, because my mom was standing right there. He was like, I'm really concerned that your daughter's begging to stay in jail rather than go home, you know? And he brought my mom back in some back room to have a private conversation with her. And when they came back out, the judge released me and sent me back home. So it was a horrible situation, but the counselor told my mom what had happened to me, and my mom assured the lady that it would be taken care of. And we got home and nothing was done. Absolutely nothing was done. And so that man got away with what he had done. And so as time went by, you know, like I said, I was in the 6th grade at that time. And the summer of 6th grade, by that time I was so horribly angry. Are we doing okay on time right now? Okay.
Yes.
So I was so horribly angry by that time. Like it was an anger that was beyond any anger that I had ever had. And I was out of my mind, you know, with what had happened to me and what had been happening to me through my whole life. It was just all piling on me by then. So it's summer now. It was literally like the first week of summertime. So we had just got released from school. And one of my classmates was begging me to come and visit him with my other friend, me and my other friend to come and visit him in the middle of the night, and to sneak out and come and visit him. And you know, and I'm scared to death to do it. You know, I don't want to sneak out. I never snuck out before in my life like that. You know, I was a runaway, but you know, I never did something like that where I snuck out and then came back home. If I ran away, I was gone until I got caught, you know? So so I was like, okay, fine. You know, I'll go get, my friend's name was Annette. I'm like, I'll go get Annette and her and I will come over, you know? So I get out of the house and I go to get Annette and I'm knocking on her window trying to get her attention and she doesn't answer. So she bailed on me and it was just me. And now I'm out. So I better accomplish the whole goal that I planned on accomplishing. And so I went over to my friend's house and it ended up being my friend and his cousin, which was in the high school that my brother went to. So he was 16 years old. And and this kid was, he was a year older than me. He was 13 years old, and he had failed a couple times and you know went through the same situation as me. So he was a year older than me. He was 13, his cousin was 16. Actually, he was turning 14. He was turning 14, but he was a year older than me. That's all I know. My friend from school. And so we're just hanging out like normal, like we would be at school, hanging out, talking, laughing, having a good time. And literally out of the blue, my friend says, me and my cousin are going to have sex with you. And I was like, no, you're not. And they're like, yes, we are. And as soon as they said that, I jumped up off the couch I was sitting in. I ran through their kitchen to go to the door that I had come into. And I'm trying to open the door, not realizing that it's locked. Like they deadbolted, there was a deadbolt on there. And I'm like frantically trying to open this door. And, I grabbed the deadbolt to unlock the door. And as soon as I grabbed the deadbolt, they were already on me. They grabbed me and started pulling me back. And, at this point I'm in their kitchen and like, I'm literally ripping everything off their countertops. Like everything's going on the floor. I'm fighting for my life, literally. And, they get me drug out to the living room and I'm grabbing couches. I'm grabbing everything and they're just pulling me and I'm pulling the couches with me. And I'm just fighting, and I finally like break free and I run to this bedroom thinking that I can just lock myself in this room. And as soon as I open the door, there's this little, I want to say 5-year-old little boy. He was a real small little boy, 4 or 5, maybe 6 years old. And I just grab him for dear life and I'm ripping at him. I'm like, help me, little boy, help me, And the guys go in and grab me right at that point. And at that point, I had fought so much, I literally had not one piece of energy left in me to fight at all. So they ripped my clothes off right there, and both him and his cousin raped me right in front of the little 5-year-old boy. And it was like, it was so weird because the 5-year-old little boy was like laughing and it was almost like that little boy's mind was already distorted. He had no intentions of helping me. It was like he was enjoying seeing what was happening to me, and it was so shocking.
Sick world we live in.
Right. So I ended up having to go to school the next year because of course I didn't go home and say anything, because for one thing I would have got the living daylights beat out of me because I snuck out. And another thing, they probably wouldn't have believed me because they obviously didn't do anything to the man 6 months ago.
Exactly.
Are they going to do something this time?
You knew
No.
Nobody gave a shit about you.
Right. No, I had nobody. Like I was literally fighting World War III with no weapon.
Alone.
Well, with my brother. My brother and I generally would be abused together, but he was so messed up that, I was angry with him for a long, long time for the sexual abuse and all the abuse that I went through with all his friends and stuff like that. But I have come to a point, in my life where, and I've watched a lot of abuse cases, and there's a lot of abuse cases out there where small children were being abused and they ended up doing things like molesting their younger brother or sister or whatever. And so I've gotten to the point where I have forgiven my brother because I know the horror that he was going through too. And he was messed up, and that's why he was doing the things he was to me, because he was also horribly messed up, so I've since forgiven him. And he had been out of my life for the last 10 years and he's now back in my life. And but I could tell, being back in his life, that he is because the first thing I said to him when he messaged me out of the blue after 10 years is, he's like, I'm writing a book on the abuse that we went through, and I thought maybe you might want to, be a part of it, And so I messaged